After years of Trish and I swapping our experiences back and forth with each other, we're ready to bring you into the conversation. Hi, Trish.
Hi, Sherri. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
Good. Today we have a special guest who happens to be my sister-in-law, but I didn't always know that. Trish, you want to bring Melissa on? Hi, Melissa.
Hello.
How are you?
Good.
Good. So we're excited to hear your experiences. And I think you said you wanted to go back to the beginning, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So just go ahead and share with us a little bit about you and your experiences.
I always knew I grew up with my mother and older sister, and I always knew I had two other sisters out there, and always wondered about them and that. And technology was different back then because you couldn't really search like you can now. When I was in my early 20s, my sister found the other two sisters, and we got to meet them. We talked to them a little bit, and then we brought them for a surprise to my mom and did like
now, were they from other relationships, or were they adopted out?
They're from other relationships. My mother had them and then they were both adopted out at 6 months and 4 years. So I didn't grow up with them.
So you all share the same mother?
Yes.
But you grew up with one sister?
I grew up with one sister.
Right. And did your mother tell you about the other two sisters, or is that something you learned later?
That's something I learned probably when I was like 13 or 14. She kind of talked about it a little bit. She never really said much about it, so we always kind of wondered, but she would never really say too much about it. And then my grandmother told us a little more about it, and then we got probably around 18. I just finally sat my mom down. I'm like, I have two sisters out there. I want to know a little bit about them. So she told us how she had a 6-month-old, and then she had a 4-year-old, and that she had just some life stuff happen, and then she left, and then they were adopted out to other families separately, and that's all we really knew. And then my sister I grew up with did her wonderful investigation skills and found one sister, the youngest one, and then she told her that she actually knew about the older sister, that they had met at one time. So we all had these little pieces here and there of connections. And then they met a few times, and then they kind of went their separate ways. So when we found them in the early 2000s was the first time they saw each other, probably since they were teenagers.
Oh, wow.
They were
so they had found each other. No, Michelle, your sister, found one of the sisters.
Yes.
But they didn't know each other.
No.
The 4-year-old didn't remember that there was a 6-year-old? A 6-month-old?
She knew she had a sister, and she was telling the woman who adopted her, I have a baby sister, but they were adopted out separately.
Okay. So then you're a teenager, and you meet these two sisters.
Yeah. So I was 20, in my early 20s when I met them.
Okay.
We brought them. They were in Georgia, and we had them come down to surprise my mom in Florida, and it was a nice thing, just to see them and meet and everything. It was kind of emotional. I looked really similar to the one that was younger. We saw her. I'm just like, oh my gosh, to finally meet and see somebody. And the older sister looks just like my mom. So to see that was kind of neat to see, how there's similarities. And then
we find that's really important to a lot of people. It was to us too.
It was to me. Yeah. Yes.
And I think that time I never really thought much about my dad's side. I grew up without a dad. It was mainly my mom and my sister Michelle. And then as I got older, I thought, I'd really try to get some information about my dad from my mom. And she said she really didn't know much. And then she did mention it's been a long time. So, events happen. And she's like, well, I think his name was Paul. And then I know he was a musician in a band. And that's all I really ever got out of it. She didn't know last name, didn't know anything about him. She said they were in a short relationship. And then she woke up one day and he was just gone. And then she found out a few weeks later she was pregnant with me. So she really had no information on how to get a hold of them. So,
And at that time, if I remember correctly, she was separated from her husband.
she was never married.
Oh, she was never married. So, but
No.
she was separated from your sister's father?
Yes.
Okay.
They were
Okay.
separated.
And you had been using his last name,
Yes.
even though he wasn't your father.
Yep. So when my mom got back together with him in her late pregnancy with me, it's an odd situation. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
So I was born and they put his name on the birth certificate because they were in a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And he knew that he wasn't my dad.
Mm-hmm.
He never really said much growing up. You know, he was in and out of the picture here and there. And then when I was 13, he came back in the picture and I kind of asked him a little bit. He said he didn't know anything about my dad. And I just kind of let it go from there. But when I got older, I was really kind of trying to just figure life out, and just that missing piece of growing up of wondering, you know, just history.
Right.
So
the next thing you did was?
I did the 23andMe because that was like the popular thing at the time. And I didn't get really anything out of that. And then I did the Ancestry, and I got so much out of that from family, just pictures and just information. I asked my sister Michelle if she wanted to do Ancestry, so I gifted her that, and she did that. And then I gifted one of my other sisters that as well. And then my grandmother, I asked her if she wanted to do it because she grew up not knowing her mother. And so she did the test, and we ended up finding a long lost sister of hers as well.
Oh, wow.
And she was adopted out as well. There's a lot of stuff going on. My grandmother was left with her father, and the mother left. So my grandmother grew up without her mother. And then, so to find a half sibling of hers was really nice. She got to see pictures. Even though she's in her 80s and didn't get to meet her, she still got to see photos of her.
Right.
And know she had a sister out there.
So this is nothing new to you or your family. Like, you've had this happen multiple times at different generations.
Every generation, I think.
Right.
It started, that we know with my grandma. She was left with her father. Her mom just left. I guess she was really young, so she was raised by her grandfather. My grandmother ended up leaving my mom and aunt with their father, and she left. And then my mom left her children.
Wow.
So,
wow, that's a lot. Yeah, that's a lot.
So, I guess I was always kind of jealous of friends who had so much family history and knew their grandmother, their grandfather, they knew all their relatives. And I just sat there like, well, I have a mom and a sister and an aunt and some cousins, but I always felt there was more.
How did your mother reconnect with her mother? How did that happen?
When she got older, my grandmother came back around. Probably when she was in high school.
Okay, so that was before you. So by the time you came along, they had already been back together. Yeah. Yes. Did either one of them talk about that experience, or it just was like it had always been? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's fast forward to, several years ago. So you did an Ancestry kit, and you had somebody come up as what? Second cousin, I think? Close relation? What was it called? I can't remember.
It was like first it was like a cousin. And I was like, oh, I have a cousin out there. And it's so hard to read the percentages and things like that to really figure out. So I reached out because I only saw, CM on there. Mm-hmm. And so when I reached out, we weren't quite sure who the relative really was. And then we thought maybe it was like a cousin, because I do have an uncle that I thought was my dad for a few weeks. And then I think you did your great investigations and come to realize, I have a brother.
So my side of that experience is a little crazy. And I think it sums up a little bit more of maybe a typical ancestry reunion than what Trish and I had for our biological families, because I had found all of these people, and all of the sudden I was getting emails from Melissa saying, I think we're related. And I was like, I don't see it. You're not popping up for me. I can't figure it out. And I was like, okay, so process of elimination, my biological mother has a brother, and he's not far from where I live, but they're not in touch with each other. But I was like, that has to be your father. Like, that's the only one on my maternal side that could be, yeah, that could be your father. And I don't know him. So here's his address. I think you should contact him. And so you did, right?
I did.
Yeah. Yes. And I kept saying to Trish, why is she not popping up as my ancestry connection? And we knew from experience that sometimes, it took a minute for people to pop up, and you might see something in one place and not see them in the other. And this was going on, I want to say, for a good part of that summer, whatever year that was. And Melissa was just very persistent and patient with me. She'd be like, I know I need to follow through with this. And I was like, okay, yes, 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 yes. And at one point, Melissa finally said something like, I know you found your birth family, so I know you know how important this is to me. And all of a sudden it hit me. I managed my husband's ancestry account. And I was like, no wonder she didn't pop up for me. She's not my biological connection. She's my husband's biological connection. And I had been so caught up in ancestry and finding my biological family, and Trish finding her biological family, and writing the book. It never occurred to me that Chad had done an ancestry kit, because he grew up as an only child, and his father was in his life to begin with. His parents were married. Chad was unexpected. He was born in 75, and his father committed suicide when Chad was very young. And so Chad has very limited memories, but he did have some information about Paul because his parents were married, and so he had that information from his mother. So at first it looked like a cousin connection for my husband, but then when we actually started looking at the genetics and how many chromosomes they shared, I was like, this is not a cousin. Actually, it could have been a cousin. He also had an uncle. I think we considered him first.
I remember
And
that.
yes, I was like, okay, well, if he's a cousin on the father's side, the only other person could be his uncle, who he had also not known because he had committed suicide. And so it didn't make any sense, though, because his uncle lived in California and Melissa was conceived in Florida.
Yeah.
And then we started looking at the amount of DNA they shared and noticed that it was the same as like mine with my half siblings. And then we finally connected that it was.
Don't forget, we were looking to see if there were any times he'd moved to Florida that we could find.
Yep.
And there was all that detail trying to think, well, what was the likelihood of
Mm-hmm.
that kind of thing?
Right. So it was kind of crazy figuring out, and when Trish and I searched, we had DNA detectives, we had search angels, but this was really the first time we were trying to figure out ourselves what actually was happening. So what was that part of it like for you, Melissa? It must have been very frustrating, I'm sure, to deal with me and just trying to figure it all out.
I think I was thankful for your help because I'd reached out to a search angel who really wasn't able to get much information. So you have all this stuff and you're looking at it and you're really trying to figure it out, and to work together, I think, as a team to kind of pinch everything out to one thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So when it came down to realizing that, I wasn't a cousin, that I was a half sibling,
Right.
I was like, oh, I have another one.
And a brother, because you had sisters up to that point.
So
how did y'all meet?
When
was the first time you got to see each other?
So I had actually left Florida to move to the New England area.
Like 1 year before.
Yeah,
right?
1 year before. I lived in Sarasota, and then we left Sarasota to go to New England.
And
So
they had lived within, what, 2 hours of each other
Yeah.
their entire lives. Yeah.
Wow.
I'd go to Orlando all the time.
Yeah. Our sister still does. Yeah.
Yeah.
Comes to
And may have
Disney.
bumped into each other, as we've seen with many
So-
people.
So
Sometimes that happens.
to bring that up, years ago, I used to be a long haul truck driver with my previous marriage, and I was driving through Georgia in High Hera, Georgia, and one of my loads was to the Walmart they were building there, and I stopped at a gas station to get a drink, and as I was going in, this girl was going out, and I was like, oh my god, she looks just like me. That's that's so weird. And I remember telling my ex-husband at the time, like, yeah, I saw this girl who looked just like me. We both saw each other. We were just like kind of stop and look. I'm like, that's so weird. My sister that we found, the one who was 4 months old, 6 months old, that was adopted out, she lived in Hyker, Georgia, and she remembers that.
Wow.
So we did cross paths at one time.
Yeah.
So
It's been crazy. I live in the same city as my biological mother and several of my siblings. How many times we've run into each other since we've reunited, which makes me know we ran into each other before.
Yeah, so I definitely remember that. It really stuck out, and it was like, it's like I wish I knew then, what I knew now.
Right.
And being so far away now, every time I try to come down to see everyone, life events happen, and I'm just not able to get down, and it gets frustrating because it should be as simple as just getting on a plane and going, and I want to.
Well, you did have a successful trip down. It was after Reunited. You and Alec came down.
Yes. So my husband and I came down to meet everyone. We came to Orlando. We met at a restaurant, and it felt fantastic to finally hug and see, and just, felt like it was meant to be.
Yeah. And you guys have a lot in common.
Yes.
Yes.
Love history, and then ghost hunting.
And the spooky stuff.
Yes. I do scare acting at a local scare attraction. I love that stuff.
And so does Chad. Yeah.
Yes.
I think by the time we found you, or you found us, I had already reunited with several of my siblings and knew how challenging it was to make a relationship without the history. And we've talked about that a lot so far on the podcast.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about that for a minute?
So I think the relationship I have with my sisters that are older, the one I grew up with, we have a good relationship together. We grew up together. Meeting the other two sisters in the beginning was really great. And I just think stuff happens in life, and we don't have the same connection we had 20 years ago. Just life takes us in different directions, just emotions, just life. I wish I had a closer connection with my oldest sister. I do talk with her on the phone a lot. I do call her. I've only actually got to meet her once because she lives far away, and it's just not able to connect together. Getting her here, but we do talk a lot and stuff. And the younger one, we still talk. We just don't get to hang out as much as we used to because, she lives on the East Coast. I live on the Northeast Coast. I just feel that their relationship with my mom isn't what they had hoped for. My mom doesn't have that type of maternal instinct with them, so they're not really, like she is with my sister I grew up with, where it's like a bond, and they just never really reconnected. So she would talk to one a lot, but not the younger one. They just never reconnected in that way that they had hoped, and I think that's discouraging when you finally do find like your birth family not to have that, what you had hoped for, what you had dreamed for. And I just feel kind of guilty that I grew up with that and they didn't.
I totally get that. And then you found your half brother, and I can talk stuff about him because he's my husband. But he's not good at talking on the phone, and he's not good at, communicating, outside of our household. And, you and I have texted a lot and tried to share like with the holidays or with the kids, the nieces and nephews. So I was just editing the episode that we did with my biological sister, and she said that now I'm 12 years older than she is. You and Chad are pretty close in age, but Laura said that when we met, when I found her, that for a long time I felt more like an aunt than a sister. And then she talked a lot about um, not feeling like my children are her nieces and nephews because she didn't know them when they were born, when I was pregnant with them, when they had first birthdays or first broken arms or whatever the things were. Um, do you want to talk about your feelings on that for a minute? Because I
Um,
think, like, I've spent a lot of time with her daughter because her daughter is their only child. So anytime, and they're very close knit. And so anytime I spend time with Laura, pretty much her daughter is there. Um, you want to talk a minute about that and those
so,
feelings?
um, with the sister I grew up with, I'm very close to her children, and then um, the youngest sister that we found, I very close with her children. I still talk to my niece. I consider them my nieces, my nephews.
How old were they when you found them?
They weren't born yet,
They
so
weren't. So you've been there. You've been reunited the whole time, their whole lives.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think I apologize. She had a son already who was like a toddler. So when
Mhm.
we met, she did have a toddler.
Gotcha.
So, and then her youngest daughter, I've been there her whole life.
And then did your children get to spend time together? Because you have two children as well.
Yes, at the time, we lived in Florida. They lived in Georgia, so we would make that commute to go to visit for birthday parties. They'd come down.
Right.
My brother-in-law had family in Florida, so they'd come down to visit, not too far from us.
Hmm.
So we always had that, like the cousin thing growing up. Got wonderful photos to share and to just look back on the good times. My oldest sisters, because they live so far away, I know them. I don't think we have the auntie and nephew connection that I'd hoped for
Hmm.
because I'm just not able to see them. I send them birthday cards, send them Christmas cards,
Right.
so.
What do you
Yeah.
think the hardest thing is and has been for you about trying to build those connections? Because you've had them obviously throughout your life at different stages, different ages, different circumstances. What do you think is common to all of them, and what has been the most difficult?
Most difficult is just trying to talk about things that may not be pleasant to talk about, and try to build on that. Um, just getting to know them and just
Right.
experiences.
I think that's the same for both the sibling relationship and the nibbling relationship
Yeah.
without the history. And we've talked a lot about history simply because when it's missing, it is an active decision to build it,
Yeah.
you
And
know.
I always try to say, whenever with my two older siblings, I would say our mom, not my mom, because I've heard
Right.
people say my mom, but it's not. It's our mom. We all have
Right.
the same mom.
Right.
So I always try to be careful of that, because, and then, I would try to talk about childhood and our experiences, and then get their experiences they grew up with.
Right.
Did your
And
mom want to talk about a lot of those experiences with the get back together? Or did they just kind of gloss over it and pick up from where they were?
she doesn't really talk about it. She's very closed. I think it's emotional for her. I think because whatever she was going through at the time when she left, I think she feels guilty and just feels that they might be better off without her. So,
Well, we've talked about our birth mothers a lot, and I guess technically your mother is their birth mother. I mean, they've reunited, but she's still their birth mother, and they had other mothers. Um, but the guilt that came with giving children up for adoption that Trish and I have heard so far runs deep. And also the understanding that when these children were given up for adoption, that was it. They bought into that there wouldn't be a reunion, that they wouldn't see these kids again, that they were making good decisions with their placements, and that was it. And I can't imagine such a huge decision, everything that would go into it. And then 10, 20, 30 years later, for me, it was 48 years later, um, that was all those years of living thinking it was permanent and over, that now it's back on the table.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can only imagine your mother went through very similar things,
Yeah. She doesn't say much about it, but I know that she was happy to meet them, to have them there. And I just think maybe she just felt disconnected because they weren't there the whole time.
Right. And the history's missing.
Yeah.
So one of my fears, Trish and I talked about morbid fears in another episode. One of my fears was always, and we have other people who've come against this, that you would finally find them and that they would already be deceased.
Yeah. So when we figured out that Chad was my brother, I did know that my father was deceased. I'd never get to meet him. But Chad was kind enough to go to his mother and talk with her a little bit, and then just get me photos and information and just tell me stuff, it just kind of filled that void. So,
and your son looks just like Paul did.
I always wondered what my dad looked like growing up, and
you knew the whole time that Sam was around.
Yeah. So when I saw that first picture, I was like, oh my God. When I show him, he's like, I don't look like that. I'm like, you sure do. And then
your mother knows.
With my mom, just to kind of confirm everything, I had the photo. So I messaged my mom, like, hey, I just want to let you know, I reached out through Ancestry and I found out, I had a half sibling, and I just want to, let you know that. And she was happy, and then, so I sent her the photo. I'm like, is this my dad? And as soon as she saw the photo, she's like, yes, that's Paul.
Yeah.
So, had you always had a burning desire to know who your father was, or was it kind of on and off, or I don't care? Or
I did. Growing up with just my mom and my sister, it was kind of our little circle. My mom did the best she could, filling in with everything. We'd get her Father's Day cards, and it was kind of a normal thing growing up. With a lot of us didn't have dads in our lives, so a lot of my best friends didn't have dads. So to us, it was kind of a normal thing not to have a father.
So you didn't think about it much?
Not much until I got a little bit older, and I was like, I just kind of want to try to figure out, see if I can find them. Just kind of figure out family history, mainly for health stuff, and just get that connection. Because I always had that little void, wondering, you'd walk by someone with blonde hair, blue eyes, and you're like, is that my dad? Could that be my dad? Do I have brothers and sisters out there? So when I did the Ancestry,
yes,
I did. So that was
amazing. Chad went from being an only child to having a sister, but he was already 40, whatever he was at that time.
And I can say honestly, I'm thankful for everything. I come, I'm like, oh my God, I have a dad, I have a brother, I have information. Tell me all about him. And I'm just like, oh. And then one day I sat there and I thought, I felt kind of selfish for that.
Because
Chad grew up without his dad,
Yeah.
He left. So he might have felt kind of like, I don't want to talk about it. Or, I don't want to, reach out to my mom to get you stuff because maybe it's hurtful to me. So.
Well, his relationship with his mom had already deteriorated for completely opposite reasons at that point. And that him going and getting that information and talking to her was a gift to you from him. And he's always spoken openly about not really knowing his dad and having very few memories. But he was very excited to know, he is still very excited, that he has a sister. His whole life, he was like, I wish I wasn't an only child. I wish there was somebody. But the reality of, locking in, and I'm saying this knowing I have struggled with my biological siblings, not because we don't care about each other, but simply because the history's not there. It's so tricky later in life to make those connections.
Yeah,
Now, you took it a step further because you wanted to take the last name, your father's last name. So you want to talk about that because you did some extra stuff.
The name I was given was not my dad's name, and I just was like, I'd really like to have the name I should have had, that I was, would have had. So I talked with my husband about it, and we kind of decided it was a good thing to do. I reached out through the court systems, got all the information, and talked with Chad, like, I need this help here. I have to have this. So he did a lot of work for me too, getting stuff to get a birth certificate. I mean, a death certificate of her father.
And it was frustrating because you didn't know where he had died.
No, I didn't know where he died.
Right.
So we tried to reach out in that, and then
right. Because Chad was depending on his mother's memory, and they were not, communicating well with each other at this point anyway, but he was depending on his mother's memory, and she had been estranged from Paul's family, and Chad hadn't seen his grandparents since he was little. He just didn't know. He had been told one thing, but it actually turned out to be that either he was told or he was remembering how his uncle died. And then there was still some I guess there still is some misunderstanding about the cause of death.
So I know on our uncle, he was in California, jumped off a pier, and they found him in the water. So that I do know. And then as for our dad, I was really trying to investigate just information and getting all that. And then when we figured out that he was in Louisiana, I did a lot of digging, investigations, contacting people, calling people, like harassing people in a way. I think, like, calling, like, hey, it's me again. I know he was in this area. I'm just trying to get information. And I did actually get enough information to where I could get a death certificate, but I had to have Chad's help with that because I didn't have a birth certificate with my father's name on it. And I tried to explain the situation, but legality, they don't care.
Right.
They have to go by policies.
Right.
So Chad helped me by sending all information, agreeing for everything. And then they finally gave me the certificate to show where he passed away at and some information on how.
So.
How did it feel once you took that rightful name?
Felt good. We were going to go through the court system, but it was like $7,000 and a lot more work. And then the one judge is like, well, you could just do a legal name change for $125. And I was like, well, I'm just going to do that route, So when I took that name, it just was like, it just felt everything, and it felt right. And made me
having the answers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And circle and plugged holes like Swiss cheese are finally like filling in to be one.
A lot of us call it puzzle pieces.
Yeah.
Everything just clicks into place.
For me, it was a part of me I didn't realize was so important until I had that name first and last. And boy, it just changed something in me. And I don't know, I can't quite explain it, but it really made a difference.
It's like my semi name is like, I am Melissa, and then go from there, and it just is who I am.
Right.
I still use my married name and on other documentation and that. So my husband was very open and understanding that, how important this was for me to be who I am.
Right.
It's great you had that support.
Yeah. He's very supportive. He's been there since day one, helping me through this, the emotions, the tears, the guessing games of when I thought your uncle was my dad, I've got this envelope stuffed with photos and information, and I mail everything to him, and then I didn't hear anything. And my husband, again, was very supportive, like, maybe it's just he doesn't want to connect with this or that. I did get a call from his ex-wife letting me know there's no possible chance that it was to be my dad, this and that. So it's kind of, I felt bad for all of a sudden I'm getting a package in the mail of photos of a kid who, hey, I think you're my dad, and it's not. It's probably a little scary on their end. And I probably should have waited a little more before I did all that, like just sending stuff. I think I was just so excited and nervous, wanting to find my dad that I was really just sent it right out there. But then I don't want to ask her for the photos back. You send those back. I don't know where those are. So there's a package of photos with me somewhere in Florida.
Well, technically, by marriage, you're still related. Somehow. I don't know how to figure that out, but somehow.
Again, meeting Chad and just getting all those photos was amazing. Seeing everything, getting the connection, figuring out where the finish was on my ancestry report,
because it's close.
Yeah.
It's the grandmother, right?
Yeah. What would you tell people who are thinking to start to look now or making that decision? What advice would you give?
I tell them to do it because it's scary and you wonder, but why wonder the rest of your life? Had I done ancestry a few years before, I wouldn't be in New England. I'd still be in Florida so that I could be closer to my brother and then my sisters. So
right.
I'm happy I did it. I have no regrets. It really finally made me feel like a person, I think. No more wondering, no more laying there. I can say, I have 3 sisters and a brother,
And it's crazy in your situation that everybody has their own different experience and their own story. And 2 of them have stories of adoption. One of the things when Trish and I started the podcast, we debated, are they only adoption related? And we were like, no, it's got to be DNA related because there's so many stories, growing up adopted. I thought, well, I'm adopted. Nobody else deals with this except adopted people. And that's not accurate. That's not accurate at all.
No.
It's not for you either, Melissa. Mm. That was a lot of courage, I think, to reach out, to strangers twice now and get the answers.
Yeah. So, I'm thankful that I had my sisters in my life and my brother in my life. And it's just nice to say I have my little family.
Right.
Before, I have my sister, now I have sisters and brother. And
right.
So.
And I know as a parent, I felt like I was giving a gift to my children just by finding out as well, just to be able to pin themselves on the map.
And
health information is really important. And I think the older you get, the more important that health information becomes.
Yeah.
Well, and Melissa and Chad share some health issues with the arthritis and some of the other stuff.
The thyroid stuff.
Yeah.
One of my sisters and I, we have a lot of similar health issues as well. And my oldest sister has a major health issue. And they said it's kind of knocked out by, you can kind of pinpoint which side of the family it is by DNA, hereditary issue that she has. So I without even thinking, I'm like, well, I'm gonna go to the doctor and get that test and see if it's mom's side. Right. And I did that test and it was negative. So it means whatever health condition she has is from her dad's side, hereditary.
Now, how'd your sisters feel about adding a brother to the whole group? You had a whole bunch of girls there.
So my 2 older ones haven't got to meet Chad. The sister I grew up with, Michelle, I know she won't be saying that. I think it's funny because she hangs out with Chad and Sherri sometimes. Yeah. So even though
she's still close,
she's not bloods, she's
right.
Yeah.
Well, technically she is. In a way, it's so confusing.
So I liked it. The one photo we have together where I'm in the middle and Michelle's on one side and Chad's on the other side. I'm like, this is my sister from another mister, and this is my brother from
another mother.
Something like that, That's kind of like the little joke that we have.
That's funny.
It's like, but then they hang out, even though they're not blood, they're still my siblings.
And we're social media friends, so we're like, oh, Michelle got engaged. Oh, Michelle's a grandmother. Michelle. Yeah.
So it's nice to have that little bond of connection, even,
So
right.
Michelle knew her father.
Yes. She wasn't 100%. My mom wasn't 100% certain that it was her dad at first. And then when we did the ancestry, it came up with a cousin on her dad's side that did connect. So we knew it definitely was.
So she didn't know him growing up.
Well, so he was in and out. My
Okay.
mom thought it was the dad, but she wasn't sure.
Okay. And then that was a confirmation.
Yeah.
And then your older two sisters, did they find their biological fathers as well?
So the oldest sister, my mother was married to her father,
Okay.
and then had her. And then when she was a couple years old, my mom left her husband just for reasons she felt was best. She doesn't really talk about it, but I know she just felt it was the best option to leave with her daughter. And then he just kind of was out of the picture. She never reconnected with him. So Kim never got to meet him. Ironically, I have, because growing up in Orlando, I grew up with my sister's dad, and then he was a friend of his. So it's like a circle.
Wow.
Yeah. So I've got to meet him.
So she didn't grow up with him because she was adopted out at 4 years old.
Yes.
So then did she find him when she was an adult?
He had passed away by then.
Oh, he had passed away.
Yeah.
And then with your second sister, who was adopted out at 6 months old, knows her mother. Did she find her biological father?
She has not. My mom doesn't know who her dad is. And she has been searching, and she's still searching. So I'm hoping she has a story on that for you.
Did she do a DNA kit?
She did. So
she did.
She did the ancestry and that, and then she's been searching and looking for him. I don't believe she's found him yet, but
wow. Okay.
Sometimes it takes a while.
It does.
Yeah. So
it does.
Trying to get something to pop up. Like I was lucky enough to have Chad pop up, kind of get to him, and I'm hoping maybe something pops up for her one day where a sibling she doesn't know about decides, I'm going to go ahead and do this test. And then all of a sudden, maybe she'll get something on that.
What do you think is the best thing that's come from all of this for you personally?
I think just always wondering, like, what else is out there? Who am I? You see families with these giant family trees. Like my husband's family can put it back to like the 1400s. And I was kind of always jealous of that, to know who everyone was. And so my little tree was just one little branch. And then I always wondered, who else is out there? What else? Who am I? So doing this, finding everybody, I've had so many connections and closing loops, and knowing who I am, knowing who, seeing photos of aunts and uncles and history, and, makes me feel more complete. So.
Right. I can definitely see that. Is there anything else we haven't talked about that you would like to talk about or bring up?
I'm looking forward to the rest of my life of having siblings and doing more with them. Now that life has finally settled down, getting to see everyone more,
Yeah, I
taking
agree.
time off from work and then coming to visit, doing stuff, doing some fun memory making, even if I'm afraid to do something. I know Chad wants to do something like parasailing or whatever. I'm deathly afraid of that, but I want to do that with him. So we have that memory of, I can't believe I did that, and I
Sherri and I will sit and watch.
Yeah.
Well, I know at one point you guys were planning on matching tattoos too.
Yes, I do want to do that way. I have a couple of tattoos.
Yeah.
I do want to have something just so just add in two of my sisters, the one I grew up with and the youngest one that we found. We all went and got little matching tattoos of little ladybugs. Just like the Lucky Ladybug Club. So
Trish has a connection to ladybugs too.
Yeah.
So we have that. So I would like to get the matching tattoo with Chad so that I can see, my brother and I have something together. So we never got that chance of growing up together and sibling fighting and just stuff like that,
Yeah.
So I think it's important to make the memories that you can, so that
I agree.
You've worked hard to find this, so make something out of it.
That's great.
That is great.
I know some people find family members and they don't connect, or they're just kind of there and they just exist. And I want more than that.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I'm glad you're part of our life. I know Chad is too.
Yes. And I love going through and sending cards and sending stuff to, like, I'm going to send this to my niece, my nephew, my sister-in-law,
Right.
and have that, be able to do that, because I'm lucky to do that, because
That was huge for me the first time. Like, I got a Christmas card from my sister.
Yes.
Right.
Wow.
Well, Trish grew up as an only child too, so having a sibling for her, just like with Chad, was significant.
This is my Christmas present from my sister-in-law a couple years ago.
And she's in New Hampshire, so she needs them. The hand warmers.
They have them.
Yes, there you go.
So,
yeah, warm hearts, cold
know,
hands,
so
warm hearts. Yeah,
it's nice to have stuff, because, even like 5 years ago, I didn't have that.
Right.
I didn't have the card to send. I didn't have the nieces and nephews to send cards to, or to see how they're doing, or send my brother cheesy gifts,
Yeah.
for his desk at work. And so I see stuff, I'm like, Chad would like that, or Sherri would like that, or
You're a good gift picker.
Must be love language.
It is.
Yeah,
it's nice to have that and to think about. And even though life does get busy and complicated, and we can't always call or whatever, we do try to stay in touch. A quick little message here and there, just enough. Say, hey, I'm thinking about you, and that way you know that you're loved.
And the little things are really important too. I found that once in a while I'll just send a little text, hey, just thinking about you, hey, how you doing, that kind of thing. And I think that also helps build those relationships. Even if you don't have time for a big conversation or can't manage to meet, I think those also still help build that tie.
Right.
It takes time and effort to get those ties, whether it's with friends, family, or family.
Yeah, and making the history, which is what we're working on doing.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Found with Trish and Sherri. And thank you, Melissa, for joining us. We really appreciate your time. Y'all, please like and subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you have a related story that you'd like to share, please send us an email at foundwithtrishandsherri@gmail.com, and you could be part of an upcoming episode. And if you'd like to know more about the stories that inspired this podcast, check out our book, Found, Adopted Friends Search for Their Birth Families. It's available on Amazon and through most bookstores upon order. Subscribe and join the conversation about identity, belonging, and the power of DNA to connect us all. And we will see y'all next time.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.